Good morning. Welcome to the webinar. We're just waiting 1 more minute so more people can join us. Okay. They're still getting in this webinar a lot of people. We'll start anyway. It's past 10. Welcome to the webinar, How to Adapt to the Fast Changing European Apparel Market, organized by CBI. My name is Thomas Vonk and I'm working for CBI at the Market Intelligence team. As you can see and read on your screen, we cannot hear or see you. Please ask your questions via the questions tab on the right of your screen. Most questions will be answered in this webinar. A recording of this presentation will be available on our website in a few days. And at the end of the webinar, we will ask you to complete a short survey about the webinar. Next, Frans. This is the agenda for the next 75 minutes. After a brief introduction on CBI, Frans will start the main presentation, followed by Giovanni. Frans and Giovanni are both market researchers, suppliers for CBI in the apparel sector. And some of our audience will probably recognize Giovanni because he's also an expert coach for CBI in many apparel projects. As a guest speaker today, we have Anouk de Graaf. She's a fashion expert with 25 years of experience in the apparel sourcing, production and supply chain in innovation and sustainability, both in Europe and in Asia. She currently lives and works in Hong Kong as a consultant for international fashion companies. So thank you for joining us today, Anouk, and we're looking forward to hear your presentation about best practices in supply chain innovation. You can ask your questions via the questions tab all the time, and we will have 2 moments to answer your questions in the middle and at the end. I will now start my brief introduction on CBI. Our mission is to support the transition towards inclusive and sustainable economies. We do this by strengthening the sustainability of SMEs in developing countries. We encourage exports of value-added products to Europe and to the local region. We promote and create decent jobs, and we pay special attention to women and youth. We support women in management positions and women entrepreneurs. And we stimulate sustainable trade and production. Next. Oh, yes, we're active in 14 sectors, and of course today we're here for the apparel sector. And we currently at CBI, we're funded by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and we can start new projects currently in about 35 countries, which is mostly Africa and Asia. Next. I'll tell you something about CBI Core Competences. Our core competences are that CBI offers 4-year projects with training sessions and expert coaching for exporters. We support governments and business service organizations to create an expert environment for the sector. And we organize market entry activities for participants, like visiting and exhibit at trade fairs and organize online matchmaking sessions with European importers. And last but not least, we offer a broad range of market studies with information and tips that help SMEs realizing their export ambitions to Europe. Next. So this is the first homepage of our website, and we invite you to go to our website. As you can see, we have market information, which if you click through the apparel sector, you find all kind of market studies which can help you, like tips to find buyers, a study on the buyer requirements in Europe, and all kinds of studies about specific products, how to export those products to Europe. So please visit our website. And we have also information about current and new programs. So if you're an exporter and want to participate in our programs, you can look at projects on our website and see if there's an open program for you to join. Okay, that's my introduction on CBI. I'll give the floor to Frans now.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you all for being here. My name is Frans Tilstra, independent market researcher working for CBI together with my colleague Giovanni Beatrice. I'm going to quickly take you through some of the big transformations in the European apparel market. And then when I'm finished with my presentation, Giovanni will elaborate on these transformations and talk a little bit about the opportunities and how you can benefit from these changes in the market. So recent big transformations, COVID-19 lockdowns, increase in online shopping, sustainable production, increasing demands for sustainable production, the digitalization of the supply chain, price pressure, shipping costs, and flexibility in production. So first of all, let's start with the COVID-19 lockdowns. As you are all well aware, in Europe, for the last 2 years, we had on and off closed shops, so high streets with closed shops, limited opening hours, travel restrictions for consumers, and even when the shops were sometimes opened, a lot of people were social distancing and avoiding going to the physical retail. So this has led to a lot of turmoil in the European apparel market, a lot of cancelled orders, billions of cancelled orders actually for apparel producers, which in turn led to a lot of unsold stock. It has been estimated that the total value of unsold stock last year had doubled. So this led a lot of brands and retailers to have stock available, but the wrong collections when the shops opened up again. So this whole situation sent ripples through the entire supply chain and also increased and sped up the shift to online shopping. I'll show you a figure right now about online shopping. Here you can see online shopping was already on the rise even before the pandemic, as you can see here. But in basically every European country, as you can see here, online shopping was on the rise in the last 5 years, but this trend has been sped up by the COVID-19 pandemic. And as you can also see here, the most online shoppers in Europe are actually in Western Northern Europe, and apparel and footwear are also the most popular categories for people to shop online for. So next up is sustainable production. There are several developments that are behind the trend for more sustainable production and stricter requirements on sustainable production. One of them is policies. You might have heard the term the European Green Deal. This is a set of EU policy proposals to make the European continent the most sustainable continent in the world, as is proposed. There are several different policy proposals. One of them is about due diligence, so that's about reporting on human rights, environmental protection. There's the Sustainable Products Initiative, aiming for more durable, reusable, repairable, recyclable, energy efficient products. There's a carbon border adjustment mechanism proposal, extended producer's responsibility, and also the right to repair for consumers. And besides all these EU policy proposals, there's also in many European countries national law proposed concerning sustainable production. Another drive for more sustainable requirements in apparel production in Europe are, of course, consumers. And this is also a trend that has been sped up by the pandemic, actually. As you can see here, this is the results of the European Consumer Payment Report from last year. Especially among young European adults, there is a trend to buy more sustainable products. And as you see here, this trend is also recognized by many European brands. So price, always very important in the apparel industry, but quality is getting more important for consumers. Of course, the media has also a role to play, and we see this in how brands and retailers are behaving. So standards and certifications are becoming ever more important. And next to the standards and certification, you also see many brands and retailers signing on to many different pledges. The transparency pledge is a good example. Many brands and retailers registering their supply partners on openapparel.org, and for instance, the UN Fashion Charter, which is about limiting carbon emissions. So another big trend in the market is the digitalization and automation of basically the entire apparel value chain. So from the production of raw materials, precision farming, material traceability, to automated manufacturing and machine learning. And basically the trend of digitalization is for manufacturers to optimize production flow and reduce costs. And we see this in the entire value chain. So 3D design replacing 2D design, making it easier for manufacturers to communicate with their buyers, speeding up the whole process. Same goes on in the logistics, for instance, also in supply chain mapping and impact measurements. So it's also, thanks to digitalization, easier to report on production and on impacts. And we also see the influence of digitalization actually in sales. So it's becoming ever easier for brands and retailers to communicate real-time data, real-time sales data with their suppliers, making the whole production process more efficient and faster. Price pressure, there's always price pressure, of course, in the apparel value chain, but what we see in recent years is fast rising material prices, both for cotton and polyester, rising labor costs, especially in the Asian market. So wages are rising worldwide, but they're rising the fastest in Asia. And I'm sure, as you're all well aware, rising transport costs. And on the other hand, we see buyers demanding level prices to be maintained for several years, and also extending payment terms. So on the one hand, we have rising costs, and on the other hand, we have always the buyers negotiating. Making negotiations really difficult and not always wanting to pay a little bit more. Concerning rising shipping costs is one topic that I want to give some focus to. That's the trend of nearshoring. This is a reaction to rising shipping costs. We've already seen several European brands reshoring their production closer to Europe. So this gives them greater control over production, lower transport costs, and also actually shorter lead times. It's not just about cost, but also about lead times. Currently, it's sometimes very difficult to even reserve a container, so that can seriously delay delivery. So this is a trend that we see right now in the market. It's actually actively promoted by EU policies and also by Eurotex, the industry association for European apparel producers. And last but not least, flexibility. This is also a trend that has been going for a couple of years, but it has been sped up by the COVID pandemic. So the right product at the right time has always been really important in the apparel market. But what we see right now is an even bigger push for brands and retailers for smaller order quantities, flexibilities in styles, and again, shorter lead time. So some of the solutions to reach higher levels of flexibility are stock service, sample rooms, 3D sampling again, and sharing sales data throughout the value chain, as you already mentioned. So these are very quickly some of the most important transformations in the apparel market in Europe in recent years. And I would now like to give the floor to Giovanni, who will elaborate a little bit more about the opportunities that such changes in the market can give you as an apparel manufacturer.
Good morning, everybody. So my name is Giovanni Beatrice, and I think in opportunities. Where there's change, there is opportunity. And in this presentation, I hope I can inspire you and show you how the problems we are facing globally will lead to opportunities as long as we're open for change. I've been working in the apparel sector for over 30 years, and I'm involved in several CBI programs in countries like Jordan, Ethiopia, and also Egypt. Okay, next slide, Frans. So let's have a look at what's happening in the world. Frans already highlighted the COVID-19 issues, restrictions, and of course, it's not a good thing from a health perspective. But what about the trade? So what has happened when we first were confronted with COVID-19? We saw order cancellations, and this made us all realize where the actual risk is of manufacturing and of the apparel industry, which is in the part of the supply chain that is most vulnerable. That's the manufacturer. And many retailers just canceled orders without any notification, without thinking of consequences, and moved their problem to become the problem of the manufacturer, which was a big international drama, which led to unsold stocks. And nobody thought about sustainability, nobody thought about environmental impact. Everybody thought about surviving, which is of course understandable, but had a big impact on the entire industry. Then people had no budget. There were no sales for retailers, especially those retailers who did not have any representation online. They needed to close their stores, and they saw one season pass while that season was unsold in their stores. So what to do? So in the meantime, we saw many consumers moving from retail to online purchases. We saw the online sales increasing internationally in different countries. Then another lockdown happened, and this made us realize that we were unable to go back to the situation as before. So as before meant cheap manufacturing in Bangladesh, in China, in India, Pakistan, long manufacturing time, 3 months, 4 months, what happened if we placed another order and then we were confronted with another lockdown. This would prevent us from getting our merchandise into the stores. What also happened was the consumer awareness changed. The consumers realized that they didn't need new items every month, that they prefer buying items with no environmental impact or with a higher quality. So the mentality changed with the consumers. What happened after this experience? And we must not forget all the other things that happened. New environmental regulations in China, which closed down many factories. We had the trade war between China and the US. Of course, container shipment increasing not 10%, but a couple of 100%. And we all realized the dependence on China, and not only on the manufacturing of ready-made garments, but also on the manufacturing of fabrics and trims. We, as the EU, depend a lot on China. So what happened? After the situation of COVID and all the orders cancelled, the factory said, well, I'm no longer taking the risk of an extended payment condition. I will no longer hand over the goods and wait 60 to 90 days until the customer is willing to pay. Not in these times where customer can cancel the order tomorrow. So let's go back to a secure payment condition. The market, who had no money because they skipped the season, realized that they needed to stimulate the consumers with new products. So instead of buying entire new collections, they placed small orders, and small orders are difficult in the big volume factory. So that forced them to look around for and source for flexibility. And in addition, they needed factories that were able to support them also financially. So where the factory said, we will not support financially, the buyer needed financial support because they had no cash flow. So this all made us realize, at least it made me realize, that the current supply chain setup is perhaps not the only way forward. Especially not in a way that the risk is with the most vulnerable part of the supply chain, which is the manufacturer in the developing country. Next slide, Frans. So let's have a look at the increased demand for smaller orders and faster delivery. What does it mean? During the COVID, during the lockdown, we opened up again, we closed down again. Now in the Netherlands, we are also in the lockdown. Everything is closed at 5 o'clock. The buyers realized that they needed to be able to react faster. Sell faster, get manufactured faster. So that's why they started to look for nearby solutions, nearby Europe solutions. You saw suddenly an interest in Italy manufacturing again, Portugal, Morocco, Tunisia, Turkey. Turkey is fully booked. So where they once could manufacture fabric in 4 weeks, they now also are facing 8 weeks deliveries due to the increased demands. Suddenly people look towards Egypt, towards Jordan, Moldova. All these nearby manufacturing countries are of interest to the buyer. So what does this mean? Are we going to increase our fast fashion? Is this fast fashion when you manufacture nearby? Can I ask you all this question? What do you think? Just mention yes or no in the chat. Is this fast fashion? You know, fast fashion is a very dirty word. So is this fast fashion when we all start manufacturing more nearby the European Union? What do you think? Well, let me explain. Let's go to the next slide there, Frans. No, this is not fast fashion. Fast fashion is where we once manufactured 2 collections a year, one for winter, one for summer. We moved to, I remember it very well, we moved to flash collections. So we did 4 collections every year, and then we went up to 6 collections every year. And where we once were able, as a buyer in the Netherlands, to purchase 100,000 pieces in one style, it's now almost not done anymore. So we have now buyers that place orders and collections 12 times a year, even 13, 14 times a year, and that is fast fashion. We feel that we need to service our consumer. We are spoiling actually our consumer, because the consumer walks in on Monday, they cannot see anything of their interest, and then they return on Wednesday, expect to see new. And that is what we are doing as a retailer, as a retailer that sells apparel in the EU market. We are trying to service the wishes of the consumer. So fast fashion is not focused only on nearby manufacturing. Fast fashion is the number of collections you are selling every week, every month, every time. So 12 collections a year, 14 collections a year. As a result of that, we are facing unsold goods. We are facing waste, which we are all familiar with. So next slide, Frans. So service versus price pressure. What we've seen over the last years, I remember when I started in the business, we started manufacturing in China at that time. It was because only of price. We asked them to manufacture our jackets, which were really cheap, and we could sell on the EU market. And then we started to talk about rules and regulations, and we wanted to reduce the impact, and the costs increased, the cost of our production increased, and it came to a certain point that we said, well, now we need to look for alternative sources. So that's when we went to Bangladesh. So is it a bad thing if minimum wage goes up and if the costs go up? No, it is not. As a world, we all have the dream that everything is shared equally amongst countries, amongst people. But the only problem is, as an industry, we react in an opposite way. We try to always source the cheapest possible. So is that really what the market wants, I wonder? So let's have a look at the two biggest organizations in Europe. One is, we all know, Zara, the Inditex group, and the second is H&M. And you can see that the average purchase in the Zara retailer is for 142 euro, where it's H&M 102 euro. Why is that? Because H&M is focused on long-term manufacturing. So they design a collection 6 months in advance, and they sell a couple of collections a year, but they manufacture in the cheapest countries possible, Bangladesh, China, etc. And they do it in a very sustainable way. Don't think because they're doing volume, they're doing a bad thing. It's not like that. So, but they focus on predicting the trends and translating it into affordable items and selling it. Many people talk about H&M as, I buy one product for one season, then I throw it away. So what does Zara do? Zara actually is more looking towards the actual trends. So instead of predicting the trends 3-4 months in advance, Zara measures the trends and wants a supply chain setup that is able to react fast. So they produce 50 to 60% in and around Spain, in countries like Turkey, Morocco, Tunisia, countries that are able to react fast to their orders. So they deliver within 6 weeks, 8 weeks. Resulting, of course, in the fact that the average sales price of Zara is higher than the average sales price of H&M. So what we normally think is that when something is more expensive than something else, well, you will sell less. I mean, that's our experience. If you look, however, at the result of Zara, you can see a relatively stable turnover for H&M and profitability, and an increased sales and profitability for the Inditex group. This is a proof of concept. This proves that it's more important to have the right product in the store at the right time than to be the cheapest. Yeah. So let's see how it can influence our future supply chain setup. So next slide, Frans. So next to that, we see an increase in online shopping. It's worldwide increasing. It's not only 1 or 2 countries. Even in developing countries, you see more and more online sales. And actually, it has its positive and it has its negative sides. Again, we are spoiling our customers. they can order 5 pieces and return 4 or return without any costs for them. So we are really spoiling our consumers. Yeah. But one of the main reasons buyers or customers are not purchasing or placing a purchase order is because of the expensive transport costs. You find a t-shirt online, it costs you 20 euro, you put it in your basket, you want to purchase it, and then you suddenly see that transporting this t-shirt from whatever country, Italy to the Netherlands, will cost you 20 euro, and then you give up. Yeah, so that is one of the main reasons of not purchasing a product, which results in the fact that online companies are looking for suppliers and brands that are willing to keep stock, because only if you keep stock in the country of the purchase, you are able to react fast. The consumer does not want to wait too long. If they order, they want to have it. That's the strategy of every retailer or every online retailer and online store. And so they are looking for suppliers that are able to service also their platform with on stock and fast delivery times. So let's go to the next slide, Frans. But what is happening now if we're looking at the increased shipping costs, of which many people think that the price will not go down as back to normal as we all hope. Not only because it will take a long time before we have supplied the market demand. There's an increased market demand to the fact that we were unable to supply the market. So it'll take at least a year. So as long as the demand for containers is bigger than the supply, the price will remain expensive, resulting in increased prices in the market. So, but it's not only about getting our products from A to B, from China to Europe or from Bangladesh to Europe, but it also has an environmental impact. We need to realize that all these dirty shipments have an impact on our environment. And now we're also talking about transport in the opposite way. So we are talking about recycling and refurbishing. We have seen that some of the brands, not only due to the new regulations or new laws that will be implemented, like the Green Deal, will focus on recycling their products, but also on refurbishing. We all want a better quality, which Frans also explained. So it's worthwhile taking back the products, repairing and washing and selling it on the second-hand market again, which is increasing massively. What does that mean? Are we going to ship our second-hand garments to Bangladesh to get it repaired and washed cheap and then ship it back again to Europe to sell? Is that the solution? Are we going to ship all our second-hand waste to India to recycle it into new yarns, to knit our sweaters and ship it back to Europe again? Well, I can tell you, not with these shipment container costs. That will not happen. So where is the solution? Where is the opportunity in the market then? Next slide, Frans. So if we look at what's happening now, for example, on the European Green Deal, that's the way our government is trying to push the entire sector into the right direction. They want to stimulate reusing our waste. They want to stimulate reducing the environmental impact. But as a supplier, as a manufacturer, as a retailer, that carries the responsibility of the entire supply chain and not only their own factory or their own store, how can we make sure we can comply? Well, the solution to that is transparency. That first, if we want to know what the impact is of our product on the environment, or if we want to know where how we can improve or how we can do things faster, we need to know what's happening where. Not only in the factory, but in the entire supply chain. So transparency in the supply chain is key to solving our current supply chain setup, to improving our current supply chain setup, to make sure that our current supply chain setup will comply to future rules and regulations. But my question is our current supply chain setup the only way that will be profitable for supplying the EU retailers? Is our current supply chain setup where we manufacture 6 months, 4 months in advance in low minimum wage countries, is that the way forward? And are we able to comply the market and the new regulations? So one way is in order to create the transparency in the supply chain is by digitalization. We need to measure. And what you see, and that results also into one of the opportunities in the market, our traditional way of doing business is we guess the trend, we start to develop, we manufacture the collection, we promote the collection, and we push it into the market and sell it. That is the current way because we manufacture everything far away. But there's also a different way. There's a different way, and you can see here on the right, H&M Group experiments with made-to-order fast fashion to tackle overstock. That is the new way, which means we measure what does the consumer want, we develop a collection, we sell the collection, we manufacture the collection, and we deliver. Just imagine how the risk for manufacturer, for retailers, for everybody in the supply chain is reduced to an absolute minimum if we can do more in the made-to-order way of supplying the market. If we ask the consumer to pay in advance and then we manufacture, that instead of a push strategy, we will follow a consumer strategy, a pull strategy. We need to manufacture what the consumer wants. So is the current way of manufacturing our products in the low minimum wage countries the only way and the best way forward to comply to the future requirements? I don't think so. So reshoring, bringing back to production to the points of sales. With that, I mean, we are selling online, we are selling in retailers. Let us also, I'm not saying replace, but also manufacture more in nearshore countries, in countries like Portugal and Morocco. Made in Italy adds value, and not only because I feel it increases our flexibility, it reduces the environmental impact, and when we combine it with automation, we are able to compete also with slow fashion manufacturing, but also because we are facing a challenge which is called circularity. We need to send back our goods to make new goods, to recycle them or to refurbish them. That cannot be done sending them back to China or Bangladesh. Is Europe and outside Europe, in countries like Morocco and Turkey and Egypt, ready for this business or supply chain transition? No. And what do we need? In order to improve those countries, we need expertise. We need the expert and the experience from Bangladesh and China in order to help and invest in those countries and combine far away with nearshoring. Next one.
Time, Gio.
So, yes, so the future of the fashion industry, it does not begin with changing the existing supply chain. That's only part. The future of the fashion industry lies in creating a different demand from the consumer. We need to change the mentality of the consumer. Instead of spoiling them, we need to make them aware and make sure they change. If there is demand, there is business. So let us create demand, but for the right business. Next slide. Okay, so how can we change the industry? Think of collectives. Let us create consumer collectives, because if we are able to create a consumer collective that decides the direction for the industry, believe me, the industry will adapt. And that's it, Frans. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. Looking forward to them.
Thank you, Frans. Thank you, Giovanni, for this very interesting part of the presentation. I have, it's not really a question, but there's a remark, and I would like to make a question out of it. It's from an employee of an apparel manufacturer of denim in Bangladesh. And he says, this time transport costs are very high. and he's from Bangladesh. Does that mean that there's becoming now, with these high transport costs, a competitive advantage for a region closer to Europe? And what can Asian companies do about that?
Well, yes. I mean, we're not talking about an increase of 10%. We're talking about a dramatic increase in transport costs. So the buyer will move more orders to nearby Europe. So you're right, that is a problem for countries like Bangladesh, but the solution lies in cooperation. I mean, let Bangladesh cooperate with countries like Morocco and Tunisia, where they manufacture a lot of denim, and you see it happening. Also, Chinese are investing in Morocco. Seek cooperations to together solve this issue and service the buyer.
Yeah, great. Thank you. We have another question here. How can you combine faraway production with nearshoring when it comes to sustainability?
Well, yeah, a good question. First of all, you see it already happening. Huh? As I said, a lot of Chinese people are investing in other countries in order to combine those two, nearshoring and faraway production. But the advantage of nearshoring is, and that's the biggest environmental advantage, that we are better able to offer the consumers what they want. And because we're fast, it's much faster. And it doesn't mean that faraway production is less efficient. Of course, many consumers are always price driven. So what I see is the solution is the basic volume orders, the low risk volume orders we produce far away, and we produce the fashion trends more nearby. And it's the mix of those two that will create an optimum of sales.
Okay, thank you. We have a question. How will China, how will the massive investment of China impact the penetration in Europe?
Well, what we need to realize is that the future of manufacturing in China will move. I mean, Chinese are the specialists, the manufacturing specialists with high efficiency, but I believe that they will more and more focus on supplying the fabrics and the trims and less on ready-made garments for export, not for local markets. That is why they are investing also outside of China. And we cannot do without their expertise. So we need their expertise in order to set up a similar efficient way of manufacturing also in nearby countries like Morocco, Tunisia, where there is a big efficiency challenge. And it's the combination of both that creates well, an interesting investment proposal. The Chinese are investing in outside, and well, that's unstoppable. Is that a reply to the question, Thomas?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So what you mean? Because we generally see that the share of import from China to Europe is declining, but they're investing in other regions and as a country, so they will still have this power.
Of course, we cannot do without China.
Yeah. Another question: what's the future for a small brand? For a small brand who makes handmade clothing?
Well, I think there is a big future, because as you could also see in our presentation, that the demand for quality products and the appreciation for handmade will increase, as long as you as a brand are able to transmit that story behind your product. And that is where lies the challenge. And of course, if you are outside of Europe, the second challenge you will have is always how do you supply the B2C market with one item, and you do it in a competitive way. That is the challenge, but there are solutions for that also. So stay to your niche, focus on quality products, and then you will for sure have a potential in the future.
Okay, thank you. We do one more question and then we go to Anouk. And other questions we hopefully can ask at the question round at the end. So there's a question for you, Giovanni. So overall, is what you are proposing lower volumes with higher prices on average a death of fashion?
I believe that smaller volumes, more frequent smaller volumes, and because they are manufactured nearby, the price will be higher than if they are manufactured far away. That is one side of the business. The second side of the business is the retailers need to start to develop collections. You know, as they pre-order with the manufacturer, we should also convince the consumer to place pre-orders, which is already happening. As an example, H&M made to order. It's already happening on a big scale. If we can convince the consumer to wait, pay and wait for the delivery of their order, but not 2 days, but 2 months, then we will reduce the risk in the supply chain substantially, and also the waste, because we will only manufacture what is sold. So those are the two trends that should definitely be added to any supply chain setup.
Okay, thank you. So we go to Anouk's presentation now. And we'll ask the other questions at the end. Anouk, you can start.
Hello, everybody. First of all, thanks a lot for the introduction, Thomas. Need to learn a little bit how this works because it's my first webinar, so please bear with me. The presentation. Okay, I am going to talk to you about the best practices in the supply chain innovation. And I want to add some of my personal experiences in here. First topic is Clean Dye. Clean Dye is a water and process chemical-free textile company. In combination with the textile exchange, one part what they do is the certification of recycled polyester. The second is the topic is Fingertip, which is a digital production management platform. And last but not least, Unfolded Movement. They are helping design and fit to go from 2D to 3D, which was also already briefly mentioned by Frans. So, okay, the first point, Clean Dye. What is a reason for people to start dyeing clean? Now, in general, you can say that people know globally water is becoming scarcer. And the fashion industry is using a lot of water. If you take only textile dyeing into consideration, the water used is 5 trillion liters of water each year. And to have a picture with that, it's 2 million Olympic-sized swimming pools. In most fashion sustainability strategies nowadays, textile dyeing is actually still a blind spot. People are talking about recycling, upcycling, reusing, but the way how to dye your textile is not always on the list. I would like briefly to go with you through some facts. Next to the 5 trillion liters of water used in the textile industry, another 1.5 trillion liters used in the fashion industry. Here you need to think about garment washing. 20% of industrial water pollution comes from the textile treatment and dyes. 200,000 tons of dyes are lost to wastewater every year. Still nowadays, 750 million people do not have access to drinking water. 23% of the chemical production worldwide is used in the textile industry. And 22,000 liters of toxic waste is dumped into the rivers in Bangladesh by tanneries every day. So why should we introduce dyeing clean? Clean dye makes apparel collections dyed cleanly in a complete, sustainable, ethical, and transparent supply chain. Here in front of you, you can see a machine which is from Dyepool. One machine has 3 tubes, and each tube can dye one color at the same time. The way how we dye is not with water in here, it is with CO2. And because you have a certain pressure and a certain temperature, CO2 will be in between a liquid and a gas, and therefore easily you can transmit the dye stuff through the fabric. So in here you see the beams. There are holes in the beam. You wrap your 100% polyester fabric for now around it, and from inside out with pressure you dye the fabric in a dry way, because when you open the door, fabric is dry. Now the CO2 used, you can for 95% it can be filtered and used again. Clean Dye is actually the first water and process chemical-free textile dyeing factory in the world. There are more companies using the Dyepool machine, but they are also providing dyeing in a conventional way. And the goal of Clean Dye is to substantially decrease the environmental footprint of the polyester textile market. I would like to talk to you a little bit more about polyester. Polyester is 52% of the market. And if you want to know a little bit more about Clean Dye, I have here some websites where you can see the Dyepool water-free dyeing or the Clean Dye Vietnam video. If you want to have more information about it, you can contact Marine for this. Coming back to the polyester, when I was working with Clean Dye, a lot of our customers were asking if Clean Dye could also dye recycled polyester. And the answer is yes. What is recycled polyester? Recycled polyester, for example, you take post-consumer plastic bottles, bring them back to a factory, clean, they make flakes out of it, chips, yarn, fabric, woven or knit, and then you can make your recycled polyester garment out of it. In this slide, you can see brands which are making recycled polyester, but there are more and more coming every day. A question from customers. How do you know if the recycled polyester you use for production is really recycled? Because in our world, there is a lot of greenwashing. And there you have an example, Textile Exchange. Textile Exchange is a global non-profit organization that creates leaders in the preferred fiber and material industry. Their goal is by 2030 to guide the textile industry to achieve a 45% reduction in greenhouse gas emission within fiber and raw material production. And actually this all will result then in a more sustainable and responsible textile industry. Textile Exchange has standards. The first 2 I will highlight after, like Recycled Claim Standard and Global Recycled Standard. And but they also take care of organic, down, wool, mohair, alpaca, and they have their own content claim standard. What is RCS? RCS and GRS. They are product standards that track and verify the content of the recycled material in your finishing product. So when you get a certification, it will provide you with the assurance that this product contains a certain percentage of recycled material. If you have a label at the end on your product with RCS blended, you can be sure that at least 5% is recycled. RCS 100 assures 95% of the material is recycled. And GRS is giving a 50%. The whole supply chain is taking care of this, and we check the traceability, the labeling, but for GRS, they have 3 extra topics. They check in your factory if it is environmental friendly, what principles you have, your social conditions, and your chemical content. So this is an extra benefit for GRS. At the moment, 14% of all polyester fabric is made from recycled fibers, so we still have a way to go. And how does this work in your total supply chain? If you take, for example, you are a fabric supplier. As a fabric supplier, you need to fulfill a certain condition and standard, which is given by Textile Exchange. A third party will come to your factory to audit you. And if everything is okay, you will get a scope certificate. The scope certificate is valid for a year. When you have your fabric ready and you want to sell it to a garment supplier, together with your production and the goods, you will send a transaction certificate. This is all going via the Textile Exchange system. So the garment maker, the garment supplier, knows that your fabric is really made of 100% recycled polyester. And you can see here from source until brand, and in the end the retailer, everybody needs to give their certificate, their transaction certificate, when they sell their product, so that at the end the consumer knows for sure the product is 100% recycled. If you want to learn more about it, here a website. I just would like to highlight 2 other points. Like I came across some information from Fashion for Good. They are doing a full circle textile project, and this is focusing on scaling polyester recycling. So in this way also you see that more and more organizations are going to start this up. Another one is TexTracer from the Netherlands, and they put the focus on transparency in the fashion industry. So this was topic number 1. I will start with the second, which is Fingertip. And Fingertip is a digital production management platform where all stakeholders, partners involved in an order can collaborate transparently, be reminded of their tasks, meet deadlines, and control the quality. Sorry, I take one sip of water. Fingertip provides you with business intelligence and is supporting you in making the most relevant and proactive business decisions. Now, what does that mean? First of all, I can say I have been working with the startup of Fingertip when I was working in Cambodia and Myanmar. And it was very consumer friendly, working on your phone, computer, tablet, everything was connected like an app. And yeah, convenient for any user to take advantage of, especially time-wise. Fingertip is developed by people from the field for people in the field. And because they know the modern supply chain issues, it was easier to make an app working with this. We all know in the field that the whole day we have to make reports, we put in data, there is a constant emailing going on between suppliers, merchandisers, and the end consumer. You have some unproductive tasks during the day. But one big point also is no visibility. If I would like to know when a supplier makes an order for me, how far he is in production, you need to send an email, the merchandiser needs to check with the factory. It takes a lot of time before you really know what's going on. And in this system, you can connect everybody with each other. As here you can see, reports and emails from one to the other. But actually, Fingertip is a smart supply network where you can choose who is connected with each other and who can communicate with each other. And also, if you are able to read and write in the system. So can you make a report, or can you only read it? There are 3 different modules. You have the production board, quality support, and live board. Production board I would like to highlight after this. So to give a little heads up on quality support, if you are a factory with your own QC department, or you are a customer who is checking the quality of the goods in the factory, normally it's still a lot done by hand. They measure, write it down on paper, make photos, and when they come back home or the day after in the factory or in the office again, they make the report for the customer. Now, this system will help you if you fill everything in the computer already while working. Then uploading the photos is easy, and it will make a nice looking report immediately after. So the same night you can already send it to your customer or even to your supplier. And I can tell you concerning live boards, number 3, that was my lifesaver, because when I was working in Myanmar and visiting factories there, you talk about how to improve the quality of the production, how to improve the delivery date. And when I was driving from one supplier to the other, on my phone, I could immediately select on supplier A, season, and then delivery, what they did, how many orders they made, what was the quality, good, not good, and I could make a report out of it. So before arriving at the supplier, I had my whole presentation ready. Now, before you had to go through Excel files, which takes a lot of time. Highlighting production board. Okay, production board, the idea is that the owner of the system fills in the whole chain from placing the order until delivery. When the so the whole idea of the months of the delivery is in your system, and then all the tasks which need to be done are highlighted in steps. So therefore you meet your delivery dates. Another thing is that on the spot directly the supplier or your merchandiser talks to the customer asking for approvals on the sample. So everything you need to know is within one file. And in this way, you can collaborate better. The third point is that if a task needs to be done, if there's a deadline which needs to be made, you get an alert. So on forehand, you make somebody responsible for a task, and they are all alerted in the right time. And if all of that is happening, you can make better business decisions in the end. So a quick recap: no more looking for emails. Your information, communication, and documentation is centralized. And okay, never miss a deadline will not be true, but at least you know when you miss a deadline. Managing your orders according to your plan, which is very important, especially in the short term deliveries. And you can live follow up the production status if you also connect with your supplier. You can have an automation of your quality inspection reports. Better business decisions. If you have more questions about this, please contact Milky or Niels. And then the last, unfolded movement. There is a lot going on in this because of online sales, but here we go from 2D to 3D. What are the benefits of 3D? 3D is beneficial concerning sustainability. It's faster, you can be more creative, and you have a better result, better product in the end. I tell you why. First of all, if you are a design company or if you are a supplier, you need to know the body measurements of your customer. And the system will make an avatar out of that. So you have your 2D pattern in the computer. And when you virtually stitch it into a garment, you can see here on the doll the end result, how it looks like. So if you change the neckline, immediately on the avatar, the neckline is changed and you see how it looks. Also concerning fabric, this is an important one because this gives the real outlook on it. So you have a digital fabric file in here. And if you fill in your stretch, your weight, and your drape, you can really make the fabric look like what you are going to sell. So concerning designing, if you change the bottom of the dress or you change from long sleeve to short sleeve, you don't have to ask the supplier to make new samples and wait for it. Here you see what happens. Color changes, you change your artwork, you change the base color of your product, and you immediately have a result. There is a lot to do also with the patterns and the grading, because before people were, for example, you have here small, medium, and large. They are designing on a medium and grading towards small and towards large. But it's very much numbers on a piece of paper. You don't know what the final result will be if you really have your large or extra, extra large garment, and how does it work with the length and the width. There's a 360 degrees view, so you can see your product from every angle. An easy way to have your collection digitalized. And now for online sales, it's instead of asking photo samples in each color you want to sell your product in, you have one made like this and you color it the way you want. No need to make the samples first. So you save a lot. And if you are doing business to business, when a customer comes and chooses from your collection, immediately they can see in a virtual showroom what the look will be of their products, if there's enough tops, bottom, how are the colors right for you. To mention 3 software programs. Here you have, this is just 3 I want to mention. It's Clo 3D, you have Optitex, and you have Browseware. Now, as Gio already told before, now most of the companies still do, we create a collection, we make it, and then we sell it. So I hope that in the future, I will be mentioning here, we create it, we sell it, and then we make it. 3D is more than just a toolbox, because it's easier to make decisions without having the physical samples in your hands. It saves a lot of time and cost, because you don't have to wait for a revised sample, and no use of materials and accessories. And it also changes the decision-making process and timeline of your total production flow. Now, Unfolded Movement is a company who helps other companies to move from 2D to 3D. So if you have questions, please ask Kitty or Diana. This was my presentation, so I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you very much, Anouk. That was really interesting information from the companies you know well. We go to the questions now, and I already saw that Frans and Giovanni have already answered in the question tab many questions, and maybe I want to come back to a couple of those questions, and we can discuss them within the group. There were questions about the Green Deal. How will the Green Deal affect exports from developing countries? And apart from that, there was also a question which relates to that, because one of the big promises in the Green Deal is the reduction of carbon. So there was also a question how to get ready for for carbon reduction. So maybe Frans and Giovanni can answer this. So how to get what the Green Deal will affect for developing countries and how to reduce carbon.
Yeah, thank you, Thomas. Shall I give it a go, Gio? And
perfect, Frans. You
can
perfect.
add.
Yeah.
Okay. So for one thing, the Green Deal is a set of policy proposals, many different proposals. Some are primarily focused on apparel and textiles, others are focused on a number of commodities. So when you look, for instance, at the carbon border adjustment mechanism, or the carbon border tax, that is a proposal that is going to focus on concrete first. So that gives us an opportunity to see how that will work out. So the apparel manufacturers, they can relax, hopefully, for a couple of more years and see how that works out for the concrete industry. What's most important, I think, is not only shifting to renewable energy sources, for instance, in your factory or in your operation, or sourcing carbon neutral materials. They're all very important, but it's also crucial that you can substantiate your claims. So you need a policy, you need to stick to it, and you need to be able to show your buyers how your products are actually emitting less carbon or carbon neutral. So I think that's most important. There are many certifications and standards already on the market. There are supply chain mapping tools, impact measuring tools that can help you with this. I would like to stress that these topics are all covered already in the apparel studies that are now available on cbi.eu. So I would also advise to take a look there. And one last thing. So some people might see the Green Deal and all the stricter requirements as something like a trade barrier for exporting to Europe. And for some factories, it might actually turn out to be a trade barrier, as many of the requirements that EU buyers already have are a trade barrier for some manufacturers. I mean, BSCI is for many importers just a very strict requirement. If you don't have BSCI, they won't do business with you. So this is already the case in some sense, that also non-legal requirements can act like a trade barrier. But if you have a transparent supply chain, if you do have a responsible manufacturing setup, it can also be a competitive advantage.
Let me add one thing, Frans. Just to make one thing clear, if you have a factory that makes t-shirts, don't think your responsibility is only your factory. Your responsibility is the entire supply chain, from fabric to trims to yarns to everything. And if you research your supply chain and you see problems, the fabric maker has a big impact on the environment, seek solutions. And it's not only your responsibility, but it also will enable you to promote your supply chain setup, so not your factory or your entire supply chain, to the buyer, because also the buyer needs to comply to the EU Green Deal, and you enable him to help him comply. So it will open doors. Take responsibility, do it now, and seek for solutions which are really out there.
Thank you, Frans. Thank you, Giovanni. I'm sorry. That's a good statement. We have a question here. I think that's Anouk can probably answer that. How do you see that all these trends and innovations can be adopted by production plants and small, medium, and enterprises? For example, digitalization of the supply chain.
Now take, for example, Fingertip. Fingertip is not only for traders or the buyer to use to make sure that you get your product delivered in time, but a supplier can also use this to keep track if they are getting their answers from the customers in time. There's money involved, so you need to invest. I mean, all those new technologies, you have to buy software or you have to buy a new system. But I think this Fingertip is connecting everybody with each other. So the one who is supplying, also you can have the trader in the middle, your merchandisers, the final customer, everybody is connected with each other. Is that covering the question?
let me add one thing, Anouk, which is also more from the perspective of this small company, the small factory that is considering digitalization, which of course is a high-tech solution for many, but it doesn't need to be, because digitalization means nothing more than measuring. If you take an Excel sheet and you measure when your workers come into the factory and leave the factory, you know the number of the number of hours they have been working. Yeah, but you need to start doing this in the entire supply chain. Measure environmental impact, measure on-time delivery, measure certification of your factories, measure where you can improve and how you can improve. So even as a small manufacturer, start measuring simple steps, and then you'll see that you are able to not only save money by making improvements, but also really can create your own unique selling points.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Okay, another question. Is there a agent from Textile Exchange in Bangladesh, and what's the benefit of Textile Exchange?
Textile Exchange, I'm sure they are in Bangladesh as well. I have experience myself in the Netherlands, Vietnam, and in Hong Kong, but they are all over the world. So I'm sure that because there's a lot of production in Bangladesh, that there is one as well. You can take a look at their website. Sorry, what was the second part of the question, Thomas?
So is there an agent, and what's the benefit of Textile Exchange for a producer?
Actually, okay, Textile Exchange is the organization which is giving you the standards of what is good for the rest of the market. So they are making sure that you are able to have your scope certificate and transaction certificate. And because everything is centralized in one system, you can also go in there and see which kind of garment suppliers are already there, which kind of customers are already using it. So they are very transparent. And if you are looking for a supplier making 100% polyester in Vietnam or in Bangladesh, you can take the list and filter on Bangladesh, see who is already having the scope certificate in hands, which kind of garment industry of where garment factory is making it already with the scope certificate in hands. So you can actually combine them together and use them in that way.
Okay, thank you. So that are all the questions. All I have to answered in written or this early now. I'm going to show you just quickly our website, and let me see. This is the market information website, so we're closing it down, but just show you where you can find our studies. So if you go to our website, cbi.eu, you go to market information, then you can choose the sector apparel. Let's see, sector apparel, and we have all kinds of studies here. So here we have a special study on the Green Deal. How will it impact my business? We have a study on the sustainable transition in apparel and home textiles. And we have tip studies. Also, coming up soon is the tips to go digital. It's not on our website yet, but it will be there quite soon within the tips. And we have a lot of product studies, specific product studies on how to export these kind of products. For example, you go to sportswear, exporting sportswear. You have the market potential study and the market entry study. So please visit our website and look if there are studies of interest to you. So I want to close this webinar.
Sorry, Thomas, I just want to highlight, and it's all free of charge.
It's all free of charge, of course. Yes, it is. Thank you. Okay, thank you for joining us all, and thank you, Frans, thank you, Giovanni, thank you, Anouk, for giving your presentations, which are all been very interesting. As said before, there will be a recording sent to you by email. So if you have not joined, you can still look at it, or you can send it to other people for whom you think it's interesting. And the presentation will be sent to you as well. Okay, thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.